There has been a new angle, as you may know, to the story at the center of this impeachment. Yet again, it involves one Lev Parnas, the indicted associate of Rudy Giuliani. You may recall Parnas told Rachel Maddow that he worked in close cooperation with Giuliani to pressure Ukraine to announce investigations into all things Biden and to oust former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. Parnas said Trump knew exactly what was going on. He said Trump was lying when he said he didn't know Lev, and that Trump tried to fire Yovanovitch multiple times, in fact. ABC News was first to obtain a recording that Parnas said was made with the president at the dinner table with a small group, and on it he can be heard saying he wanted Yovanovitch fired. ABC News released the recording tonight. Here is the pertinent portion.
The biggest problem there, I think, where we need to start is we got to get rid of the ambassador. She's still left over from the Clinton administration.
Where the ambassador was
basically walking around telling everybody, wait, he's going to get impeached. Just wait. I mean, it's incredible.
Get rid of her. Hooray. Okay, get her out to me. I don't care. Get her out to me. Take her out. Okay?
Excellent.
Do it.
Tonight, Rachel Maddow spoke to Lev Parnas' attorney, who this afternoon gave the recording to the House Intelligence Committee.
A 1 hour and 24-minute recording of that event. It is a dinner in the Trump Hotel, the private townhouse. President Trump is there. Mr. Parnas is there. Obviously, Mr. Fruman is there. And about 40 minutes into the recording, the subject of the ambassador comes up.
Why does the subject of the ambassador come up in this context?
Well, interestingly enough, President Trump raises the question, says, what's with Ukraine?
You have conveyed this tape to the House Intelligence Committee as of this evening?
Yes, as of this afternoon.
Do you expect that they will make it public?
I hope they'll make it public.
So many questions. I hope our guests are ready. Here for our leadoff discussion on this consequential Friday night, Jessica Roth, a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, now a professor at the Cardozo School of Law at Yeshiva University here in New York. Mara Gay, former New York City Hall bureau chief at the Wall Street Journal, now a member of the New York Times editorial board. Bill Kristol, editor-at-large over at The Bulwark, also a veteran of the Reagan and Bush administrations. And we welcome to our broadcast someone we all know well around here, and that's Elise Jordan, contributor to Time Magazine, former aide to the George W. Bush White House and State Department. Good evening and welcome to all of you. Elise, just rewatching that, I realized I had to begin with you, given your credentials. How is it someone can roll a voice notes recording with the President of the United States at a dinner in his branded hotel? Question two, how is it that the president is learning new information about his ambassador from a guy who knows Rudy?
I'm absolutely baffled that someone was able to record a president during a dinner simply because rule number one of being a staffer is that you're protecting your principal. You don't let someone have the phone if you care about the person that you work for. You don't let someone have a telephone. That isn't the job of the Secret Service. That's the job of the staffer. And so I'm just shocked by the sloppy staff work. But two, why was Donald Trump having dinner with these characters? President Bush, President Obama, H.W. Bush, you aren't just randomly having dinner with men of such repute. And it just is absolutely jaw-dropping to me.
Counselor, as a legal matter, now that we've all heard this recording, how does it impact, do you think, if at all, the push for witnesses before the Senate?
Well, it underscores the fact that there's still so much that hasn't yet been put before the Senate, before the Congress in its entirety, and before the American people. So if this recording is available, what else is out there? Now, obviously, no trial can go on forever, but it's a very powerful reminder of the fact that there clearly is additional evidence out there. This may be the tip of the iceberg. We know there's evidence that was collected by the State Department in the form of documents that the Senate has identified with particularity that it wants. But it's just yet again a reminder there's more out there. And if there's the opportunity to bring additional witnesses and documents before the Senate, we're going to see a much fuller picture, and perhaps we will have evidence that directly ties the president to the conduct in question, as this recording so clearly does.
Mara Gay, I have to ask a nakedly political question, and it assumes that we are not going to see witnesses or documents or removal. Do the Democrats then have any kind of moral superiority to run on? Do the Democrats then, are they left waiting for pieces of evidence to come out that could have come out in the Senate, i.e., whatever John Bolton is writing?
I think both of those things are true and possible. First of all, it was the right thing to do. Impeachment was the right thing to do, and trying to force the hand of the Republicans to bring witnesses is still something they should be focused on. Democrats may have the higher moral ground, but they're going to have to figure out how to translate that into some way to win this election. And as I was watching the past 3 days of these hearings, I kept thinking to myself, the election is more important than ever, because it's the only way this president is going to be held accountable. And ultimately, they're going to have to find a way to transition this into either a campaign talking point or they're going to have to use evidence that should be coming out before the Senate, but instead may find its way into our mailboxes as journalists.
Bill Kristol, I've been following you throughout on social media. What do you make of the case as the Democrats laid it out, the performance of Mr. Schiff as recently as tonight, the brand new audio tape we're listening to tonight, and chiefly, if it were a secret ballot, what would happen?
Well, on the brand new audio tape, I think we know, don't we, that there was a fundraiser that night at the Trump Hotel?
Yes.
And that I assume that's why Parnas and Fruman were there. They were big donors. And at the dinner, I think Trump and those two are there, and also some White House staff, I suspect. I think Johnny DeStefano, the head of presidential personnel, and I take it that's whom Trump is speaking to when he says,
giving the order to
get rid of this. I mean, the fact that they knew, obviously, at the White House, and Pompeo knew, I think, too, that this was not being pursued for any legitimate reason of, gee, let's have an improvement in our ambassadorial competence in Kiev. They held off on doing it for quite a long time. And Pompeo clearly distanced himself from it. And when he finally went ahead and fired Yovanovitch, he replaced her with Taylor, who was not a Trump loyalist, because he kind of knew, it seems, that what Giuliani was up to at Trump's behest was really bad news. I mean, the degree to which people haven't really focused on that, I think, to which Pompeo, to some degree, and Bolton really try to distance themselves from things, and they're both veterans of government, and Bolton really a veteran, that they were really uncomfortable with. I mean, Bolton asked two different subordinates to go see the White House counsel after meetings. Did that ever happen in your day? I mean, just unbelievable. It shows how worried they were about the whole plot, which had been going on for a long time, how central that was to Trump's own understanding of his own political agenda, and so forth. So I think that the tape just confirms the importance of the Ukraine plot in Trump's mind as a political plot, not obviously having anything to do with foreign policy in the traditional sense. In terms of the case, I think I didn't see every minute of it, but they did a very good job laying out the case, and Adam Schiff was excellent. And I think they were generally very impressive, actually. When you think about it, this isn't something they had, unlike with the Starr report, and they had the months and months to develop. I mean, the Ukraine story broke, September 9th, I think? And here we are 4 months later. And they put together a pretty impressive, they did a pretty good job there pretty quickly in finding out what had happened, having good witnesses in the House, accumulating that evidence, putting it now in a presented form that could be explained and tied together in a coherent way. Schiff deserves a lot of credit. Who really does deserve credit, I've got to say, though, is Nancy Pelosi. I mean, think where they were on September 9th. The Mueller report had seemed to have fallen flat. There was not going to be an impeachment. Then this story broke. She managed this in a very impressive way. Man, shifted much more of the work, I'm sure, in terms of the details of the presentation, but in terms of putting together a coherent and compelling case, doing so, doing the right thing, I think, as Maya says. And remember, at the time, everyone thought this is politically extremely risky. Look at Clinton. Presidents get a sympathy kind of rebound if you try to impeach them. And will the American public understand this stuff about Ukraine? As Pompeo said to Secretary of State, can you believe that? Said to a journalist, well, the American public doesn't care about Ukraine. He said this, a couple of days before he's going there. It's really wonderful foreign policy. But anyway, and the fact that the Speaker was able to put all this together, and we'll see where we end up in the Senate, but we ended up, politically, she didn't hurt her people. In terms of the Constitution, I think she did the right thing. She was reluctant, as we know, to do it. And so I think this is sort of, when you get depressed about American government and American politicians and leaders, I myself am impressed by what she was able to do over these last few months.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.